The first time she heard it, the sound cut the cold morning like a cry from a place people forgot. It wasn't a coyote and it wasn't the wind. It rose, fell, and carried something that made the back of her neck tighten, neat, sharp, and plain. She set the coffee down without tasting it. The yard was still. Frost sat on the fence wire like sugar. Then the cry came again, closer. For a moment she thought her mind played tricks. Then she saw the mare on the ridge, chestnut against the pale sky, standing too still to be at ease. "Are you calling me?" she said, and the word fogged in the air. The mare flicked an ear but did not move away. It looked across the pasture as if it weighed the distance between them, like a person trying to choose a door. The woman, Evelyn, pulled Walter's old coat tight and stepped off the porch. Her boots pressed little ovals into the frost as she crossed the yard. She felt foolish for talking to a wild horse, but the silence had been long in her house, and the voice in her head had grown louder since the fall. "If you need help," she said, "you have to show me." The mare stamped once, then took 3 slow steps along the ridge and looked back. Not a flinch. Not a spook. A choice. Evelyn's chest tightened. "All right," she whispered. "Lead on." She latched the gate behind her and followed the fence line to the break in the rocks where the creek bed bent. The ground told a story in scuffs and prints. Small hooves, sliding marks, a patch of dark hair snagged on sage. "Easy," she said, more to herself than to the horse. "My knees don't run anymore." Halfway down the wash she slipped on the shale and caught herself with her palm. The sting woke something stubborn. She kept going. The mare waited at a bend, then moved again, slow enough for an old body to keep up. Twice the mare stopped and turned her head as if to say, "Here. Watch your step." "You're not afraid of me," Evelyn said, breathing hard. "Why?" The answer sat around the next turn. A shape lay against the sand, curled and wrong, a foal with one leg tucked under where it shouldn't be. Its chest moved in short, quick pulls. Its eye opened, glossy and dull at once. Evelyn dropped to a knee before she knew she had decided. "Hey there," she said softly. "You waited." The mare stood above them, ears forward, not fierce, not soft, just holding the space. Evelyn pressed 2 fingers to the foal's neck and felt a thin drum of life. "You brought me," she told the mare. "Now don't you run." The mare didn't. The canyon held its breath. And for the first time in months, so did she. Evelyn lifted the foal's head onto her lap and felt how small it really was. The ribs showed like the rings on an old tree. The eyes half closed, tired but not ready to quit. "You're all bones and fight," she said. The mare watched from a few yards off, tail swishing, not a sound from her throat. Every few seconds she stamped the ground once, as if to remind the world she was still in charge. Evelyn took off her scarf and wrapped it around the foal's neck. "You're warm now, stay with me." The foal blinked. The sound of the wind filled the canyon again, low and slow, like breathing. She looked up. The mare hadn't moved. "You trust me that much?" she whispered. The animal gave a deep exhale, fog drifting from her nostrils. "Fine. I'll do what I can." The way back up the slope felt longer than when she came down. She slipped twice, dragging her leg. Halfway up she stopped and spoke out loud though no one was near. "Walter would laugh if he saw me doing this. Said I couldn't even keep a houseplant alive." Her voice cracked. "Guess he never saw me try to save a life." At the top, she looked at the old pickup parked by the porch. It hadn't moved since her husband passed. The tires were soft, but maybe one more use was left. She found the hand winch and an old blanket from the feed room. With the patience of someone who had learned to live alone, she rolled the foal onto the blanket, slid it over a patch of grass inch by inch until the mare followed close enough to touch. "It's all right," Evelyn murmured. "I'm not stealing him. I'm fixing him." She drove slow toward the barn, every bump a jolt. The foal whimpered once but stayed still. When she glanced in the mirror, the mare trotted behind the truck for a while, then stopped at the gate, head high, watching. Evelyn parked beside the feed shed, left the engine running for the heat, and spoke through the open window. "I'll take care of him, I swear." Inside, she laid the foal on the hay under the single hanging bulb. The light turned his coat to copper. She mixed water and the last of the goat milk powder in an old kettle. "You better like this," she said, tipping the bottle. The foal drank, slow but steady. For the first time in years, the sound of life filled her barn. Outside, a distant whinny echoed through the valley, one long, low call. Evelyn closed her eyes. "I heard you," she whispered. "You can rest now." That night the wind howled across the valley, rattling the loose tin sheets on the barn roof. Evelyn sat on an overturned bucket beside the foal, rubbing her stiff hands together for warmth. The light from the single bulb swayed with each gust, casting shadows that moved like old ghosts on the walls. The foal slept, wrapped in her faded quilt. Every rise and fall of his chest felt like a small victory. She reached for the old phone on the wall. Its cord stretched and twisted like a vine. The number came back to her without effort. When Darlene from the Bureau of Land Management answered, Evelyn hesitated. "It's me," she said. "Evelyn Hart. Out past Echo Creek." There was a pause on the other end. "Evelyn? It's been years. Everything all right?" "I found a foal," Evelyn said quietly. "Wild one. Hurt bad. His mother's still around, but she brought him to me." Darlene sighed. "You know the law, Ev. You can't keep a wild one. It's considered a removal." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I'm not keeping him. I'm saving him." "I'll send someone to check," Darlene said, softer now. "Tomorrow maybe." Evelyn hung up slowly, the click of the receiver louder than she expected. She turned to the foal. "We've got until tomorrow, little one. Better get strong before they take you." Morning came with pale light bleeding through the slats. Evelyn's breath smoked in the cold air as she poured warm milk into the bottle. "Wake up, River," she said, testing the name as it left her lips. The foal blinked, stretched, and drank greedily. "River it is," she whispered. "You came out of nowhere, but you keep moving." Outside, the crunch of tires on gravel broke the quiet. Evelyn's heart sank. Through the crack between the boards, she saw the white truck roll to a stop. A man stepped out, mid-40s, clean-shaven, cap low. "Morning, ma'am," he said when she opened the door. "Cal Jensen, BLM field officer." "You here to take him?" she asked. Cal looked past her into the barn. "Just a look. Not here to cause trouble." His tone was calm, practiced. "Can I see him?" Evelyn stepped aside. Cal crouched near the foal, his big hands gentle as he checked the wound. "You did good work," he said finally. "He'll live." Evelyn crossed her arms. "Then you'll leave him be." Cal met her eyes. "For now. I'll file it as temporary care. But the law will want him back." She nodded, lips pressed tight. "You people and your laws," she muttered. Cal's expression softened. Sometimes the heart's got better sense than the rules. He stood and tipped his cap. "Keep him warm, Mrs. Hart. I'll be back in a few days." When he drove off, she walked to the fence and saw Sienna, the mare, standing on the ridge watching. "He's safe," Evelyn called. "For now." The mare gave a low sound, turned, and vanished into the mist. Evelyn leaned against the post, the chill biting through her coat. "We've got a few days, River," she said to the wind. "Let's make them count." The next morning, frost covered the window panes like lace, and the world outside looked frozen in place. Evelyn moved slowly, her joints stiff, but her purpose clear. When she reached the barn, River was awake and restless, pawing at the hay. His coat looked brighter under the pale light. "You're getting stronger," she said, her voice soft with pride. "Don't you dare quit now." He nickered, a thin sound that made her smile. She poured the milk into his bottle, humming an old tune Walter used to whistle on cold mornings. The melody filled the quiet barn like a promise. "You like that?" she asked. "Your grandpa used to think the horses listened better when he sang." After feeding, she brushed the dried mud from River's legs. He leaned into her touch, calm and trusting. It had been years since anything had leaned on her. She felt it deep inside, the ache of being needed again. "You've got some fight in you," she murmured. "That's good. You'll need it." By noon, a truck engine echoed down the road again. Her stomach tightened. Cal, maybe. But when the door creaked open, it wasn't the white government truck. It was a dark pickup, older, heavy, with dust caked on the sides. The man who stepped out was broad and sunburned, hat pulled low. Cliff Maddox. She hadn't seen him since the town meeting about grazing rights. He had the same half-smile that never reached his eyes. "Heard you've got company in your barn," he said. Evelyn's shoulders stiffened. "You been snooping again?" "Just walking my land," he said, leaning on the fence. "Saw tracks. Mare and foal. Then just the mare. Figured you'd taken in the little one." "You figured wrong," she snapped, but her voice wavered. Cliff's gaze drifted to the barn door. "You know the law. The Bureau will come. And when they do, they won't ask nicely. Wild ones don't get special treatment." Evelyn folded her arms. "You here to tell me to hand him over?" Cliff shook his head slowly. "I'm here to tell you what happens if you don't. They'll take him. If he's weak, they'll put him down. They don't have time for orphans." Her throat tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" He looked away. "Because I owe you. Or maybe your boy. He once saved my son from the river. Thought maybe I could pay that debt." The words hit her like a sudden wind. You didn't see anything, she said quietly. Not a thing, Cliff replied, tipping his hat. But you better think fast. The law doesn't sleep. When his truck disappeared down the road, Evelyn sank onto the porch step, the cold biting her palms. She whispered to herself, I won't let them take him. Not this one. That night, she dreamed of fences, endless lines of wire between her and River. On the other side stood the mare, watching with eyes that looked like her son's. She woke with tears on her cheeks and whispered into the dark, I've already lost enough. The following day the wind came early, sharp, restless, and full of whispers that carried over the hills. Evelyn woke before dawn, drawn by a feeling she couldn't explain. The air inside the house was cold enough to make her breath visible. She pulled on her coat, wrapped a scarf around her neck and stepped outside. The horizon glowed faint pink, and the barn's lantern still burned weakly through the fog. When she opened the door, River lifted his head from the hay. His ears flicked forward, curious. Morning, sweetheart, she said, rubbing her hands together. You hungry already? She fed him slowly, her fingers trembling from the chill. He drank, and the sound, steady, patient, filled her heart with warmth stronger than the coffee waiting inside. She didn't hear the truck until it was too late. The crunch of tires on gravel froze her in place. The white government vehicle stopped near the gate, dust rising behind it. Cal stepped out, his hat pulled low, the same steady calm on his face. Morning, Mrs. Hart, he said, voice gentle but firm. Didn't mean to startle you. Evelyn's jaw clenched. You're back sooner than I expected. Paperwork travels faster than mercy, he said with a faint smile. Mind if I check on him? Her shoulders slumped. Go on. Inside, Cal knelt beside River. He's stronger, he said after a long silence. That leg's healing better than I thought. He's eating, walking a little, Evelyn replied. Still gets tired quick. Cal stood and met her eyes. I'm supposed to report him for pickup in 2 days. But, he glanced at the foal again. Sometimes there's room for delay. I'll file the report under temporary rehabilitation. It'll buy you a little time. Evelyn's throat tightened. Why are you doing that? He hesitated, then said quietly, because sometimes following the rules isn't the same as doing what's right. Her eyes softened. Thank you, Cal. He nodded, tipping his hat before leaving. When his truck disappeared down the dirt road, Evelyn turned back to the barn. River watched her with those big, trusting eyes, and she smiled through the tears she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Looks like we've got 2 more days, little one. Let's make them count. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low, she walked to the pasture fence and froze. There, on the ridge, stood Sienna. The mare's coat shimmered copper in the dying light. She hadn't seen her since that first day. You came back, Evelyn whispered. The mare tossed her head and gave a soft, low whinny. Evelyn took a slow step forward. He's alive, she said, voice trembling. Your boy's alive. Sienna pawed the ground once, then stood still, her eyes fixed on Evelyn with something that looked almost human. Trust, sorrow, gratitude. The woman pressed a hand over her heart. Don't worry, she said softly. I'll give him back when he's ready. The mare turned toward the ridge and disappeared into the mist, leaving Evelyn standing in the wind, her breath shaking with both fear and hope. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. The ticking clock on the kitchen wall sounded louder than ever, each second stretching like a warning. She tried reading an old magazine but couldn't focus. Her thoughts kept circling the same worry. What would happen when Cal came back with that trailer? What would they do to River once he was gone? She slipped on her coat and stepped out into the dark. The sky was thick with clouds, the moon just a dull blur. The barn light flickered weakly and the wind smelled of coming snow. She pushed the door open and froze. River was standing on his own. Wobbly, unsure but upright. His small legs trembled as he shifted his weight, testing the strength that hadn't been there a week ago. Well, look at you, Evelyn whispered, tears already pricking her eyes. You're stubborn just like your mama. River took one shaky step, then another, and almost fell. Evelyn rushed forward, arms ready to steady him, but he caught himself before she touched him. For the first time in months, she laughed, a full, surprised sound that filled the barn. You're gonna make it, she said, brushing her sleeve across her cheek. When the morning light came, it broke through the clouds like a promise. Evelyn sat by the barn door with her coffee, watching River nap in the straw. Every so often he twitched in his sleep, little legs kicking like he was running somewhere far away. Her peace broke when the phone rang. She hurried inside and lifted the receiver. Mrs. Hart. It was Darlene's voice. I've got your report here. I see Cal filed for a temporary hold, but you know it's not permanent. Headquarters wants an update by the end of the week. If the Foal's well enough, they'll arrange transfer. Evelyn's hand gripped the phone tighter. Transfer where? I don't know yet, Darlene said carefully. It could be a sanctuary, or an auction. Depends on resources. Evelyn went silent. Her eyes drifted to the window where the wind swirled the dust outside. He's not ready, she said. I understand, Darlene replied softly, but my hands are tied. After she hung up, Evelyn stood still for a long time. The house felt too quiet, too heavy. She walked back outside, her boots crunching over the frozen ground. Sienna's tracks still marked the edge of the ridge from last night. Evelyn followed them for a while, stopping only when the trail disappeared into the hills. I can't let them take him, she said to the empty sky. He's meant for you, not for cages. A soft neigh floated through the distance, faint but clear. Evelyn smiled faintly. I hear you, she whispered. Just give me a little more time. As the wind picked up, she turned back toward the house. Snow began to fall, slow and quiet, covering the tracks she'd just made, as if the earth itself wanted to keep her secret. By morning, the storm had settled over the valley like a heavy blanket. Snow covered the roof of the barn and muffled every sound except the steady groan of wind pushing against the old boards. Evelyn wrapped herself in 2 scarves and trudged outside, her boots sinking deep into the drifts. She opened the barn door and felt the rush of warm air hit her face. River was standing steady now, his head lifting the moment he saw her. Well, aren't you a sight for sore eyes, she said, brushing the snow from her shoulders. You're walking like you own the place. He answered with a soft snort that made her smile. After feeding him, she pulled a chair close to his stall. I don't know what I'm going to do with you, she said. If I keep you, they'll come for both of us. If I let you go, I might never see you again. Her voice cracked on the last words. I already know what losing feels like. She didn't notice how much time passed until a shadow moved outside the barn door. She froze, hand instinctively going to her chest. A quiet knock followed. She recognized the rhythm before she heard the voice. You decent Mrs. Hart? Cal? She called. The door creaked open. He stepped inside, brushing snow off his hat. Storm's a bad one. Figured I'd check on you before the road closes. His eyes softened when he saw River. Well, would you look at that? He's on his feet. He's been walking since last night, Evelyn said, pride and fear mixing in her voice. Cal crouched, watching the foal's slow movements. He's strong. Stronger than most this age. He looked up at her. You've done good, Evelyn. But you know what that means. That he's ready to go, she said quietly. He didn't answer right away. There's another option, he said finally. There's a protected zone up north, no auctions, no pens. If I call it in as a release, they'll let him go there. Her breath caught. And Sienna? If she's still around, Cal said, she'll find him. Evelyn turned toward the barn door where snow blew in fine white streaks. I'll take him myself, she said. Cal hesitated. That's a long drive for one woman in this weather. She met his eyes, calm and sure. I've lived through worse storms. Cal nodded, understanding something unspoken. I'll get the trailer ready. We leave in the morning. When he left, she leaned against the stall door, watching River chew at the hay. Tomorrow's the day, little one, she whispered. Time to go home. Outside, the wind howled again, and somewhere beyond the ridge, a soft cry answered, a sound Evelyn knew by heart. Sienna was out there, waiting. Morning came wrapped in silver fog and the hush that follows a storm. Snow lay thick across the yard, untouched and glittering under the pale sun. Evelyn's breath clouded the air as she fastened her coat, pulling the hood close around her face. The barn stood still and quiet, but when she opened the door, River turned his head immediately, eyes bright and alert. Good morning, boy, she whispered. Today's the big day. Cal arrived not long after, his truck growling down the icy road, the trailer rattling behind it. He stepped out and nodded at her, his cheeks red from the cold. You sure about this? He asked. Evelyn didn't hesitate. I've been sure since the day she brought him to me. Cal gave a small smile. Then let's get it done. Together they led River toward the trailer. He balked at first, hooves slipping on the frozen ground. Evelyn held the lead rope loosely, speaking in that low, steady tone that always seemed to calm him. It's all right, River. Trust me. After a few seconds he stepped forward. The sound of his hooves on the wooden ramp echoed like a heartbeat. Once the gate was secured, Evelyn climbed into the passenger seat of the truck. The heater hummed and the smell of coffee and hay filled the small space. They drove north, the mountains rising like quiet giants in the distance. For long stretches neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't heavy, it was the kind that holds understanding without words. Cal finally broke it. "I've seen a lot of rescues," he said. "Most don't make it this far." Evelyn kept her gaze on the horizon. "Most don't have someone waiting for them," she replied. The road narrowed as they climbed higher into the hills. The world outside turned wild again, stretches of golden grass beneath white peaks, cottonwoods bending in the wind. When they reached the gate to the protected range, a young woman waited there, bundled in a thick coat and wide-brimmed hat. "You must be Mrs. Hart," she said warmly. "I'm Maya. I'll take it from here." They lowered the trailer gate and River stepped out, cautious but calm. His coat glowed in the sunlight, strong and healthy now. Maya smiled. "He's beautiful," she said. Evelyn walked closer, brushing her hand over River's neck. "You remember this place," she whispered. "It's where you belong." And then, just as she said it, a movement on the ridge caught her eye. A flash of chestnut against the white hills, Sienna. The mare stood tall and still, her mane rippling in the wind. Cal followed her gaze. "Looks like she's been waiting for him." Evelyn's throat tightened. "No," she whispered, voice breaking. "Looks like she came to take him home." River lifted his head, ears pricked. He gave a sharp, bright whinny that carried through the valley. Sienna answered with one low call, steady and full of warmth. Without hesitation, River trotted toward her. The two met halfway, touching noses, the sound of their breathing mixing with the wind. Evelyn's hand covered her mouth and tears filled her eyes. "He found her," Cal said quietly. Evelyn nodded, voice trembling. "She found us." For a long while no one spoke. The only sounds were the soft clop of hooves and the steady hum of wind weaving through the sage. River stood beside his mother now, his copper coat shining under the noon sun. Sienna circled him once, slow and deliberate, then nuzzled his neck the way mothers do when they're making sure everything's real. Evelyn couldn't look away. Cal took off his hat and held it against his chest. "That's a good sight," he said. "Doesn't happen often." Evelyn nodded, blinking fast. "I almost forgot what joy looks like." Sienna lifted her head and looked straight at her, eyes deep and knowing. There was no fear there, no distance, just trust. Evelyn raised her hand in a silent goodbye. She didn't wave, didn't call out. She just stood still, letting the moment hold her. River turned once more before following Sienna toward the open hills. He stopped halfway up the rise, snow crunching under his small hooves, and looked back. For one heartbeat, everything else disappeared, the cold, the silence, even the ache in her chest. He gave a faint toss of his head, like he understood something she didn't need to say, and then he ran. Evelyn's knees felt weak, but she stayed standing until the two figures vanished behind the ridge. Cal rested a hand on her shoulder. "You all right?" "I think so," she said, her voice thin but steady. "It hurts, but in a good way. Like a door closing softly instead of slamming shut." They walked back toward the truck. Maya waited by the gate, holding a small beaded string in her palm. "It's a binding charm," she explained, offering it to Evelyn. "For connections that aren't meant to break even when we let them go." Evelyn ran her thumb over the smooth beads. "Thank you," she whispered. When they reached the house that evening, the world felt lighter. The fences stood quiet, the barn empty, but the silence wasn't cruel anymore. She hung the charm above River's stall where the wind could touch it. It clicked softly against the wood like a heartbeat. "Run free, little one," she said. "Run where the fences can't find you." Weeks passed. The snow melted and green began to push through the soil. Evelyn repaired the porch steps, mended the old gate, wrote letters to her niece, and filled her days with small, steady work. The ache was still there, but it had softened into something gentler, gratitude. One morning in early spring, as she stood on the porch with her coffee, a sound reached her through the quiet, distant hoofbeats. She froze, her heart catching. On the far ridge, two shapes stood silhouetted against the sky, one tall and strong, the other smaller but sure-footed beside her. Sienna and River. They didn't come close, didn't need to. River lifted his head, his mane catching the light like flame, and looked toward her. Evelyn smiled through her tears. "I see you," she whispered. "That's enough." The wind carried her words across the field. The horses turned, side by side, and trotted back into the wild. Evelyn sat down on the porch step, the warmth of the sun spreading across her face. For the first time in years she felt completely at peace. Moral lesson. Love is not about possession. Sometimes the truest love is the kind that lets go, the kind that trusts the heart to find its way home, no matter how far it must travel.